Begin transmission. Hello, everybody. It is Outer Rim Transmission. This is episode number 69. Back with the full crew with Milton and with Ben this week. We're talking all about the brand new spectacular Andor trailer, some more on a follow up for the Light and Magic documentary, as well as a brand new Lego Star Wars special that is the summer vacation. So, first things first, it's been a couple weeks since we heard from Milton, so we're going to check in. How was your vacation? I know you have a lot to say about the ILM documentary, so just spill it all for us right now, man.
Yeah, first and foremost, is glad to be back. Vacation was great. I always recommend anyone to take a vacation. That's what they're meant to be, is something to be relaxing and to escape the real world. Um, I'll get into it. So the ILN documentary, messaged you guys last week. I believe it was on Friday when I got back from Florida. I legit watched that whole documentary from about 8 o'clock at night, let's say 7 o'clock at night to about 1 o'clock in the morning. I finished all 6 episodes. I think it was 6 episodes.
Yep.
Yeah, banged them out because I was hooked. Always been a big fan of behind the scenes. Always been a big fan of how Star Wars is made, just overall storytelling in general, and just to get the behind the scenes of how ILM was formed was amazing. It's like how integral a part that John Dykstra played in the early stages of ILM was amazing. And I knew who that person was, but I didn't know how significant he was to the creation of that particular, company, and the legacy still lives on today. So overall, I love the documentary. It was one of my favorite documentaries. I can go back and probably watch it again. That's how much I loved it. And I loved how personal they got with the different people that joined the company as the years went on. So it's one of the better documentaries that Lucasfilm has put on since that they've started their company. I would say this is probably top five of all of them I've seen thus far. And what's nice is Lawrence Kasdan directed all the episodes, so it was nice to see that an original Star Wars guy was the person to put it together somewhat, or at least to shape what the documentary was going to be. So I enjoyed it. If I had to score it out of a 10, it's a 10 out of 10. Hell, you
Oh,
know what? No, actually, it's a 12 out of 10. That's how perfect it was.
yeah, I watched episode 2 because, as me and Ben were saying last week, we're just kind of doing one a week, especially now Cassian Andor got delayed. It's like, okay,
Mhm.
let's really space all this out to try to give a little Star Wars every week. So I watched it yesterday, and it was really cool because I haven't seen a documentary that goes that in depth with George Lucas in the beginning of that second
Yeah.
episode. I've read a lot of his history. I know all about the car crash, all about that stuff. But and we said this last week, all the interviews with George Lucas is so cool. Like seeing all this new footage of George just talking. And in these interviews, he was like having a good time. Like he was laughing and I was like, holy crap, like he's really enjoying this. And that for me is pretty neat. Seeing like a candid version of George Lucas. And him just like laughing about like the whole heart attack thing. He's like, oh, if I would have been dead, he said something about like really morbid about being dead or something. And I just laughed because I was like, whoa, George,
Right.
you went a deep end, man. But yeah, John Dirkstra, man, he was instrumental. I've heard about him from some of the behind the scenes of Star Wars that I read about, but like it's cool again having all these guys, pretty much all of them still hanging around, being able to actually, firsthand talk about their experience and see them like in that 50-year-old footage, like how young they look, and then
Right.
seeing like how they look now. It's like so crazy. Um, but how far behind they were was like shocking. And until they got that lady Rose to like
Right.
start putting a schedule down, it was like, holy crap! No wonder why George Lucas was
Well,
having a heart attack
and
almost.
and I mean, and I remember reading about a lot of this and like documentaries and whatnot, or just reading them in books. And yeah, that's expected. Even how now that we get the full picture of why they were behind in that movie, it's expected because they were all a rogue group of people. They were the rebel. I think the one lady says we were the rebellion, of
Yep.
FX and movie making. So it would make sense that they would be so new but not have a direction on how to proceed. They were so busy spending the money on developing the technology, which was key. However, you still had to shoot the scenes and get everything, on schedule, which luckily they brought someone in to get things, to short sort the ship, and then obviously as you see, you guys only saw episode 1 and 2, correct?
At least
Yep.
I've only seen episode 2.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you'll get to see how ILM was then later taken on to a next level, and what happens to John.
Oh, well, I already know about him
Well,
like
I mean,
leaving at
yeah.
some point.
Let's be real here. It's been what 45 years, whatever. Like spoilers. He, he he doesn't stay with the company, but you'll see why he doesn't stay with the company. You'll see why it was best for ILM to go into a different direction.
Okay. And Ben, what are some of your thoughts from episode 2?
Yeah, I would say the second episode I liked even more than the first episode, and the first episode was incredible. Just because of what you mentioned, Chris, to start like your whole the intro to all of this, like seeing so much of George and hearing him talk so candidly and having a good time and everything. It's just so refreshing, because us as Star Wars fans, like since the Disney purchase, there's always that kind of like elephant in the room, I would say, of like the fans being, in the back of our heads, like, man, George Lucas isn't involved in this stuff, so it's kind of that weird elephant in the room. So like just seeing him actually candidly involved in this documentary is awesome, and just getting the different tidbits and behind the scenes things, hearing him laugh, as you mentioned, was great. And then just hearing him talk so like frankly and openly about like, hey, we had to create our special effects company because there was literally none in the entire world. So like, just that type of innovation shows shows how much bigger George Lucas is in Hollywood and in the entertainment industry than just Star Wars alone. Like ILM and its like impacts on movie making and filmmaking and TV and I guess TV making would, it's just far bigger than even Star Wars is, arguably, just because it's revolutionized like the entire industry.
Mm-hmm. And that's what's nice about this documentary. Once you guys get into the next 4 episodes, you're going to see the impact it's made. And it's I'll tell you what, I believe the gentleman who's the puppet master, I forget his name.
Phil Tippett?
Phil Tippett, yes. His story, because they go into a lot of these characters. They pretty much like say like Phil Tippett, John Knoll, and who's the bald headed guy that was in it? I forget I know his name.
Dan
I saw him
Marin?
with the glasses. Yeah, Dan Marin. They're like the 4 horsemen. And John Dykstra, they're like the 4 horsemen of like, of ILM, but also of like, FX. And then obviously when John leaves, Steven Spielberg's gonna really love having those 3 guys around to make his films. Like you're gonna see how much Steven appreciates those 3 guys and how impactful they were, especially on Jurassic Park.
That's good to hear. It makes me look forward to the next few episodes even more, just because like I absolutely love seeing Spielberg in the second episode.
Yeah.
And, he's my guy. Like to me, I think he's the best director of all time, like bar none. So like just seeing him even involved in this documentary is great, because
it's huge.
He knows how big it is. And like and I just loved hearing his story when they were talking about that, when they were showing the first rough cut of Star Wars. And it's funny, like, all the other friends were just kind of like meh on it, and he was the only one that like really liked it, even in the rough cut. So it shows even back then, like he had the eye for really good movies.
Right. Yeah, I'm telling you guys, once you get through these next 4 episodes, you're gonna be like, it's worth it. I kid you not. Like I know people could say, oh, you're just living in the moment and just going off of vanity and just your love for movie making and in general. No, this is one of the better documentaries I've watched in a long time. It's not there's not one bad episode that I was like, oh, this is stupid. I'm like, oh, I'm eating it up the whole time.
Well, here's the thing. Okay, because I seen on the This Week in Star Wars, Kristen Baber was actually interviewing Lawrence Kasdan, who directed and executive produced this and everything. I think the difference is like this guy who put this together is used to like working on big budget movies of fiction. Mm-hmm. So he has that way of like telling a story with his own characters, and in this he's like bringing the story out of his own friends.
Exactly.
And they're embellishing it, and his direction with that helps, I think.
Oh, without question. That's why I said it was a great benefit to have Lawrence direct this, because I think if it was just like, I'm gonna throw shade, but if it was one like a regular Disney documentary maker, I don't know if it would have been the same, because I really feel like because Lawrence knows the property, whether it's Indiana Jones or Star Wars, and he knows George and Steven and Darren or Phil Tippett and John Noel. He knows these guys, so he knows how to tell their story. He knows how to embrace their strengths. He even knows how to embrace their weaknesses and say these are the low points of how we were making these films or
Yeah.
what the struggles we had. One particular part in the documentary you're going to see is Doug Chang.
Oh.
Yes,
Yep.
his story is told. His story is amazing, and they go into the. There's so many people that I didn't realize that had such an impact on this company. Where I'm thinking, man, I really need to go back and like look into some of these people that were then added on later as like the decade. So in the 80s, it became like obviously what it became. But even in the 90s, when they're going more of a digital route, which is huge, and we're going to see how impactful digital filmmaking has made with movies and TV, how that really just stuck with me because I'm like, man, I didn't realize like this person was like that responsible or they had this impact on how to make this movie. So I mean, again, two big films we're going to talk about: Jurassic Park and T2, Terminator 2.
Oh.
Those two movies are really going to be something that once you get to those episodes, you're going to be like, oh wow, like how impactful that changed the game. And even The Abyss by James
Oh.
Cameron, they talk
Oh,
about that.
Oh yeah, those things are mega impactful. Not even just like watching this documentary, like knowing, seeing other documentaries over the years, like how impactful ILM was on those specific movies. And like another thing that we'd mentioned, like to start all of this is like I think like you both mentioned about like Kasdan, directing it and putting this thing together. I really would have almost a skeptical eye of if they would have been able to get all of these people to be involved with the documentary, specifically George Lucas. Like if you just have some John Smith, whoever directing and making this, would have George,
No, probably wouldn't have
actually,
done it.
I would say actually been involved. And I really don't think so. So like to me,
Right.
hats off to them that Kasdan like did it, because I think without him, George wouldn't be doing this.
It's not like
I
he
agree.
needs the money, right?
Yeah.
So it's like
Yep.
his good friends like ask him for a favor, like, "Hey, I'm putting this together." He'd probably be like, "Yeah, sure, why not?" Yeah. So
Yep.
That's the
that
thing.
that
You can
makes
tell
sense.
you can tell everyone in this documentary loves each other. They're friends. They have great respect. They're all close. They're willing to be vulnerable. And Phil Tippett's one of those guys. Trust me, once you get to his part of the documentary, when they focus on him, you're gonna feel how vulnerable he is
Oh.
because of his craft and his background. Even another thing's gonna pop up because I'm so excited talking about this. They talk about Ralph McQuarrie and how impactful he was. There's another matte painter that I didn't realize who it was that was just as impactful as Ralph McQuarrie in doing the matte paintings for Star Wars. And you're gonna see his story and how he comes from like a legacy of Disney culture. And it's dope.
Well,
Like
we've
just watch.
seen that guy. I don't know his name. I know who you're
I forget
talking
his
about.
name.
Yeah.
Yeah, I forget his name because I was like, oh, I've seen him before, but then I didn't realize how important he was. And I'm thinking, oh, this is amazing. Like, I can watch this again. Now that's how good it is.
It's
One-
entertaining as heck. Like I didn't
Oh.
expect to be like that drawn in. Like I was basically like, oh, I gotta watch this week. And then within 5 minutes, it was like one of those tasks almost. Like I
Done.
gotta watch this. And then within 5 minutes, I was like, oh, screw that. I'm really enjoying this a lot more than I thought I would.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. One of the funniest lines too that came out of the second episode was, I thought it was funny when George was talking about when he was going around pitching this movie to different studios. I think it was like at Warner, maybe another one of the studios. They had mentioned he was describing Star Wars, and whoever the executive was like, oh, this is probably some type of a movie like Disney would do. And it's just ironic now that Disney owns it. Like,
Right.
That was great. Oh man, but fantastic. If anybody out there is not watching the ILM Light and Magic documentary series 6-part on Disney Plus, then you're missing out because it's something else. And gonna do some housekeeping as usual. If you are listening to our podcast, we always go live 9 o'clock Eastern on Fridays over on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Starrapter. And you can always listen to us on the row, on the go, wherever your podcasts are found, searching Outer Rim Transmission. And you can always chat live with us here in the chat room. So getting into it, Ben, do you have anything else do you want to bring up Star Wars wise before we jump into our our main topics here. I got
Um,
something to say, but other than that,
yeah, I mean, for me, I really don't have any like too many like mega Star Wars type things this week, really, other than like when I went out and I was telling you guys before we went live. I went on a kayaking trip a couple times this week actually, and just like seeing some of the scenery like out about like the downed trees and like the forests all around the rivers where we were
mm-hmm.
kayaking and stuff. Like it just kind of reminded me of like Endor or like some type of a Star Wars environment, just because like there was one we actually had to like kayak underneath it. It was like a big, really big wide tree like at a triangle angle like across the river. So just like kayaking underneath that, it just felt like something you'd see on Endor. So nothing too big really in say the actual Star Wars realm, just more like seeing environments that kind of reminded me of Star Wars.
Yeah, that is funny because I think of the same thing myself. Yeah, it's either that or Jurassic Park. I think of like if I'm
Yep.
going through a forest, I'm like, I feel like I'm in the Lost World. There's a Stegosaurus or there's a T-Rex that's roaming around a corner, or there could be some Wookiees or something in the trees. I don't know. So
Yep.
it's always fun to
Right.
think about.
Yeah,
For
actually,
me,
I
yeah,
do
go
have
ahead.
something to add, but I'll
Oh
go,
yeah,
Chris. I'll go after you.
okay. Um, I teased something earlier in the week. I'm not ready to show it off yet because they're not out of the boxes yet, and I feel like it would be funner to just show these things out of the box because they have some playability to them, which could be fun. So crossing my fingers, I'll have that stuff ready to go for next week. But in the meantime, there was an update for Star Wars: The Old Republic. It's going on its 10th year now. They finally got an update out, which includes some more story content with Darth Malgus, with the Manan. There's this planet called Manan. If you're familiar with that's the Old Republic, it's the underwater planet with these neutral species called the Selkath that are fighting over the Kolto between the Empire and between the Sith and all that. So that's going on in the game. You can actually go to Manan. It was actually pretty good. I gotta admit, it was actually pretty fun because they've since implemented on the game. So now you could have like you could group up with Sith characters and different things like that if you're Republic. So it was a lot of fun because I was, the first day or two of a new content expansion in any game, there's always a ton of people in whatever new content that is. So there's plenty of people going around killing a bunch of Sith troopers and whatnot. And I was grouping up with some random people. It's always a fun like Star Wars fantasy when you're like a archetype character like I am, the big, strong commando, like a character from like you might see in the Clone Wars, big Gatling gun type thing. And then there's like a bounty hunter dude like with dual pistols like flying up in the air shooting while there's a Jedi like smacking them in the face. It's that kind of fantasy stuff that I love when it comes to this game and why I still play it 10 years later. And it's been a while since I'd done like group content like that. So for me, I just want to say I enjoyed my time, and it was a lot better than when the expansion first came out in February. Um, Star Wars: The Old Republic is not the best place right now because like a week or two ago they lost their game director, which is basically like you lose that, and it's like okay, that's like literally like you're a director for a movie. You lose your director, it's like what's gonna happen? So right now the game's kind of in a flux. We're hoping that obviously it's going on to live on and on and on, but who knows? But for right now, I'm having a good time. So that's my week in Star Wars.
Yeah, you mean, look, you know how I feel about the video games when it comes to Star Wars. Like, it's been goofy to me up and down. But like I said, I'm gonna give this a chance eventually, especially when they do the remake. And I know you guys talked about that with it last week a little bit, the remake and how
Oh
that's
yeah, they
delayed.
delayed it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm still goofy about the game, so I'm trying to hold off hope. So, my week in Star Wars actually this stems back not to last week, but the week before. So, one of my friends who's actually watching right now, we had a little birthday celebration prior to my actual birthday, and she gave me a choice on what I wanted to do after my first part of my birthday. And she was like, "Do you want to watch Top Gun, or do
Oh,
you want to go back to the house or watch Star Wars?"
huh.
Of course, you know what I chose. And I decided to have her watch A New Hope. And this is
Oh,
her first time ever watching it.
what?
Yeah, this is the
That's
first time
awesome.
she's ever yeah, she's never seen it because I was like, I'll need you to watch these. And she watched A
Yeah.
New Hope, and she actually liked it. She asked her quote, and I'm probably gonna butcher this, and I'm sure she'll text me. Um, she said that she was surprised that there was a lot more story. She didn't realize there was a lot more story and like substance to it, pretty much. And she
Oh.
actually enjoyed it. She liked it, and she talked about how she really enjoyed like the story and the characters. I think she said, I know she liked Chewie. I think either Han Solo or Leia might have been her favorite character. I have to. She'll correct me on it. I guarantee you. But
Good
I
choices.
think she was all about Chewie and Leia, or Han Solo and Leia. I think I have to go back and even think about it again. But we're gonna watch Empire next. I don't know when, but I already told her. I said that is going to be a movie that you're not going to talk much. You'll have questions, but you'll get so sucked in from like the first scene. So I'm curious to see how she responds to Empire.
That's very interesting because, almost 50 years, and there's a bad thunderstorm. I don't know if that's going through the mic or not, but having somebody that watches these things for the first time in the modern age of cinema, it's interesting to see if these things hold up, right? Like just the effects and how it looks, and the dialogue is way different than it was back in the day. So that is relieving to hear that people that are new to the franchise are still getting in on the ground room floor with A New Hope.
Oh yeah, like well, the funny thing is, like Milton, you talk about that story with your friend. My younger cousin, he's 22 and his girlfriend is 21, and he just started her on Star Wars a couple weeks ago, 2 3 weeks ago. They started on A New Hope, and she actually loved it as well, and she really enjoyed Empire, and um, you know, it's like it's cool seeing people that are like just getting introduced to it,
Right.
enjoying it and appreciating it. And that just shows how good of movies they are. Like they hold up, the stories hold them up. And, that shows how important storytelling is in movies. Like you can throw out the graphics for anything. Like the graphics for any movie today is better than a movie even 3 years ago, graphics wise, for the most
Exactly.
part. So, like, you can throw out that type of stuff. And as long as the story's there, that's all that matters,
Right.
honestly.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like she really enjoyed the story, and like I said, I know she's gonna like Empire. I think she's not gonna be ready for how it plays out. Her one main question was, she's like, is there a love, like is there a romance part of that for Empire? I'm like, yes. I'm like, just watch it. I'm like, I'm not saying nothing else. So yeah, so
That's
we'll
great.
Oh,
watch it, and I'll keep you guys updated next time whenever we do get to that movie.
yeah, that should be a returning segment on this is Milton's friend's reaction to Star Wars for the first time or something.
All right. Yeah.
All right, so we're gonna get into this week's releases. We have quite a few. We're gonna start off with our paper canon or legends, whatever you want to call it, because literally the first thing we're talking about is the Essential Legends. They always come out in batches of 3, and these are great curated collections of some of the most popular, some of the most quality of the Legends content out there. We have, of course, the continuation Rogue Squadron, Kratos Trap. This is the third novel following Wedge's Gambit. We also have Death Troopers, which the next time I'm in Barnes & Noble, I'm actually going to pick that one up because that is one of the first Legends Essentials books that I don't have. So I want to give out I want to try out the new format of the trade paperback version because it is bigger than the old Legends books. It's not the small ones. These are like the trade paperback ones. Better for me because I don't have to squint as hard. It's tiny pages and wording. But the one I want to talk about is Darth Maul Shadowhunter. And the reason why I picked this one up because it's another unabridged audio book. And it's voiced by Sam Witwer, Darth Maul, and Palpatine himself. So as soon as I see that, I told you guys, I was like, instant buy. It's been a while since I listened to a Star Wars audiobook. I had listened to a couple other ones. I listened recently to Shatterpoint, which I really enjoyed, and then the original Rogue Squadron, which I wasn't too hot on. Nothing against the voice actors or anything, or the voice actor or whatever, the narrator, I should say, in Rogue Squadron. The story just didn't pull me in. But holy crap, if you're looking for a tour de force of narration in a Star Wars audiobook, you got nowhere else to look than Darth Maul Shadowhunter because this story has got me, and the voice acting prowess of I'm not even sure, and I'm sure he is, but it blows my mind that Sam Witwer is voicing all these characters from Newt Gunray's Nemoidian accent to a spot on Palpatine to a spot on Maul, obviously, to even like female voices and smuggler voices and Yoda and Qui-Gon and Mace Windu. I'm like, how is this guy this good at voicing every character in Star Wars? Because I've only seen him do a couple impressions, and they're usually Darth Maul and Palpatine. But diving deeper into the story, without going too deep in, is right off the bat, I will say this is exactly the story I want to see or experience with The Acolyte coming out next year. We always talk about, whenever we bring up The Acolyte, is how are they going to deal with the Sith when they're supposed to be extinct? How are they going to do anything interesting with the Sith? And this book basically does that same story, right? This is predating the Phantom Menace. It's having to do with the Neimoidians having information about this supposed blockade that's going to happen on Naboo. Somebody gets this information and runs away. Palpatine simply sends Darth Maul to go and track this person down and kill them, and they're of course in the underlevels of Coruscant. But the crazy thing is, this guy gives information to this guy, gives information to another guy, so it's like this chain of command where Palpatine's like literally like, you have to kill every single person that gets a wind of this information because it'll completely spoil all the plans that I have. So you see Maul just going in the dark, cloakness of dark, like masking his identity with the dark side, going into these very dark and gritty, and just, this is everything I want from The Acolyte, basically, because it's like, he's even killing Jedi, assassinating Jedi. He is going in, he's taking out Black Sun agents and like all the scum and villainy of the Star Wars universe. And it's just like this doom, this sense of doom is so great in the story, because you get these people that get wind of the Sith and they're like, oh my god, like this scoundrel has heard about him, and he's the one with the information, and he's literally telling his protocol droid buddy, like, if this is actually a Sith, then we're screwed. Like, we got to get the hell off this planet. And it's like a complete like disaster movie for them, because no matter what they do, Maul just like keeps coming up. It's basically a horror story. You see a Sith just going after these guys relentlessly. And man, oh man, I am absolutely loving it. I'm more than halfway done already, and I started this thing on Tuesday. It's about 10 hours long, so I know most people could probably just sit here and finish it in one day. And believe me, if I had the time, I probably would just sit here in my room and listen to this thing all day long, because it is that good. I don't know if you guys have experienced Darth Maul Shadowhunter, but if you haven't, I know both of you are audiobook fans. You got to pick this one up, man.
Yeah, actually, I have it in my library. I don't have it on my iTunes, library yet, but I have it on my computer. But I don't think I have the version where Sam Witwer is.
No, you got to get that one.
So I need to get that one instead, because I'm sure like Mark Thompson or someone has done the one that I have, which will still be fire, but it's Sam Witwer, so I can always listen to him talk all day, every day. That's one book I'll probably like download eventually and get.
Yeah, what's cool about this story is it does predate the Phantom Menace. So, in reality, I'm thinking the story's headcanon. There's nothing that's conflicting with the story enough to be like, this isn't canon. Because this is in an era, or in a time where we don't really have any other Darth Maul, Palpatine stories overriding that. All we have so far predating Phantom Menace is a really good 5-issue comic miniseries involving him, involving Cad Bane, and a couple of the bounty hunters that are going after like this Jedi prey that Maul's stalking. But other than that, that's really all we have. But after reading this or listening to this book, experiencing the book, I'm like, we need more Star Wars stories like this. Like, just pick a random character, doesn't matter where in the era of Star Wars, and just let's do a deep dive. Not a story that's promoting an up a story, or put it this way, all this stuff is tie-ins, right? Like, we're always getting the books like the Obi-Wan books because they're putting out an Obi-Wan show. We're always getting this, we're getting that. We're getting, Lego Star Wars. We're getting this Han book to promote the Galactic Star Cruiser. I'm just hoping we get to a point when Lucasfilm, besides the High Republic, starts just putting out random books, not tying it into anything, just randomly in the timeline, enriching the characters that I want to see more of, not just because it's promoting an upcoming release. Because I think that's a trap. They're falling into that trap way too much right now.
Oh yeah, 100%. Like for example, with this book came out in 2001, so that would have been right before Attack of the Clones. So it was obviously a couple years after Phantom Menace. So it wasn't tied into any on-screen project or video game or whatever, and it was just a really good book. And like, that was, that's always like the allure of people with like the Legends books, because like there's so many just good stories, as we mentioned with the documentary, they're good stories, like, or the rewatching the Star Wars movies, good stories, good stories, good stories. Like, you can't hammer that point home enough. Like, this is an example of a really good story. Like, I read this book way back in middle school, when it it was a few years after it released, obviously, but it was still, it hit me back then. And looking back over it again this week, it's just like, yeah, it's one of the better Star Wars stories out there from Legends and just in general. And like you said, Chris, like, this is just, pretty much, I retconned it right in behind Phantom Menace, basically. Like, it's there now. So like, those type of things I feel like are really important for Star Wars. You don't have to make everything tie into live action projects. You can just make really good one-off stories, like for example, Catalyst. Catalyst is a great book, awesome book, whatever. But it ties into the movie. Like, why not just give us a straight up book about something else in that time period that's not tied into that movie, like, at all? Just like you said, a standalone character book. Like, so, those type of things are what I feel like the main example of that in current canon is the Tarkin book from like 2014 or 15, I think. Like, that's probably about the only like main, like, really character type thing that's not tied into a movie at the time. So, like, you have those type of examples, but yeah, I mean, this Darth Maul book, excellent book. I definitely highly recommend it to people. And as you said, Milton, like, I'm definitely interested in picking up the Sam Witwer version at some point, just because it's like, hey, that's Darth Maul reading the book to you. Like, what's better than that?
I'll tell you what, I'm working out with this going on, and it's just like so motivating. I was telling my coworker, I was like, I told him I have Palpatine in my ear right now, man. I'm lifting weights, listening to Palpatine go, hunt them down, just like all this crazy, just like darkness, like, yes. And it's sick because it's so mature. Like Maul breaks into this one cell block, and his target's there, and it just shows you like how lethal he is. He throws his double-bladed lightsaber, it's decapitating somebody, then he lifts the Nemoidian up with the Force and just like beheads him like nothing. It is peak
fire.
Maul. I'm just like, holy crap, man. But
oh no, I love listening to books when I work out. Like, it's right now, I think I went back and listened to the last book in the Legacy of the Force series, Invincible.
Whenever I love that series so much.
Whenever Jaina and Jason have to face off. And even like, there's scenes I'm thinking, oh my, I'm in the middle of doing curls or something, and I'm getting hyped because I'm like, oh, Darth Kaitis is out here wrecking people.
Wow.
And it's like, that's what's up. And how they portray it with the music and the sound effects, it's like you're listening to a movie while you're working out.
Yeah, it really is. They do top-notch work at Penguin Random House, I guess, it produces it. I will interject real quick here, Ben, and say that there are a couple trilogies. I think I actually do have them on my shelf, but they're obscured by all the books. Yeah, I have the Alphabet Trilogy, was something that was totally disconnected, and literally all those characters were brand new. So I got to give praise where credit is due there. And then you have the Thrawn Ascension Trilogy, which is basically completely another galaxy. I don't know if it's ever going to like come into play with like Thrawn in the live action stuff, but at least that was so far enough before Thrawn in the show and all that it's at least it's very much standalone because it's a trilogy, and it's so I'm just like, come on, after experiences, I'm like, let's get like our own canon Maul story or something.
Or just come out and be like, hey guys, that Shadowhunter book canon now.
Yeah, basically. And okay, so we're gonna move along. The other things we had this week, we had, what is it, the Halcyon Legacy 5, and that is, celebrating the Galactic Star Cruiser. Interesting thing to note here is that they specifically have a story that takes place right around the time of The Mandalorian, 5 years after Return of the Jedi. Because this story is all about the Halcyon Legacy story. It's a framing device of, oh, they're in between the events of the Last Jedi and the Rise of Skywalker, but then they do these flashback stories of these little lessons and stuff of like where the Galactic Star Cruiser had been. So at one point, it's 5 years after Return of the Jedi, and there's this guy that has a debt on him from the Black Sun, and guess who shows up? But Bosk, 4LM, Zuckuss, like all those well-known bounty hunters. So it just, it just confirms the fact that, hey, these guys are, still doing bounties around the time of the Mandalorians and his prowess. So I say, like, I'm so surprised we hadn't seen any of those infamous bounty hunters in Book of Boba Fett. I think me and Ben, we were saying, like, oh, there's that season 2 rumor, or at least in some Mexican release, there's a season 2. So I gotta imagine you're not gonna put these characters in this random comic book set at the same time of the whole Mandalorian thing and not bring them in eventually in some way, shape, or form.
Oh yeah, I mean, I feel like those characters for sure will be involved in something at some point. Yeah, like there was that. It was probably a few weeks ago now, or it was probably during Kenobi, or a little after. But anyways, like it was on like the Spanish Disney Plus or whatever, and it showed like a screenshot, and underneath like the Book of Boba part, it said like season 2 or something. So there's a chance for that, and I think if they do a season 2 of that show, also the fact that like the crew merch from the show, like literally you had members of the crew posting like things like that say season 1, and if if it says season 1, that probably means there's a second season. So to me, like I feel like we'll get those characters, especially with the feedback. I feel like that's the big thing as well with the feedback with the fans and whatnot, because we're still probably a ways out from a second season of Boba. After the feedback from the first season, especially the way the first season ended, you can pretty much go in any direction you want with Boba, I feel like. So, they can for sure incorporate those iconic bounty hunters, I would say.
Yeah, what about you, Milton? You have anything to say about, hey, would you like to see some of these ancient, or not ancient, but some of these infamous bounty hunters show up eventually? Who knows? I don't know what the lifespan of a Trandoshan is. I feel like they could live a while.
I mean, it depends on how it serves the story. I mean, look, we all know if Star Wars is at its best when it tells an organic story that makes sense. And obviously with Boba Fett, we saw what they were trying to do, but I know the ending wasn't the best. And I know we've talked about it and speculated during our review of that show how we thought it should have ended in a sense of leading into a season 2. Because, however, if they bring back those legacy characters, or I guess canon characters that are well known, I'm fine with it as long as they serve a purpose of the story. Are they out trying to now compete with Boba? Is there some type of grudge that they had or something? Maybe they had a falling out. I don't know. As long as they do it right, then I'm fine with it. If they just force them in there just to force them in, it's like, all right, it's kind of a waste of space. Put them in a comic or put them in a book.
I could maybe see, like, just to throw a little prediction out there, I could maybe see if we get a second season of the show, what if it's, Cad Bane seeking his revenge? Because he's definitely not dead.
I don't
based
think
on the
dead.
ending, he's definitely not dead. So what if it's him and he goes and is like, okay, Boba defeated me in that one-on-one. How's he gonna defeat me if I have Bosk and IG-88 by my side and 4LM, and it's that whole thing, and maybe you get kind of like a bounty hunter war type deal.
Yeah, I'd be fine with it. Like I said, it just needs to make sense. Like it needs to be where it fits the story, forces the plot, and actually kind of like bring Boba back to who his character is. Like I need
who he was from Mando season 2.
Yeah, pretty much.
I mean,
oh man. And speaking about, we were talking about, hey, if it doesn't feel forced, that's why I want to get into the Lego Star Wars, the summer vacation, because I don't know about you, Ben, but I don't feel like the Star Cruiser was all that forced as I thought it would be.
All right,
Here, I'll just mute myself right now while you guys talk about this part.
Milton's gonna love this. Milton's gonna love my part. So for me, I feel like, especially knowing, okay, I feel like, let me, I guess, caveat my statements with me knowing about the price of the Star Cruiser Hotel, with me knowing about all the stuff surrounding it, etc. Basically, every time we got to the parts with the Star Cruiser, I was kind of just rolling my eyes, like, oh man, we're here. So like, I was glad, like, out of the entire like 45 minutes,
Yeah.
only maybe like 8 minutes total was the Star Cruiser, 8 or 10 minutes. So like, that was super nice.
Yeah.
Because I feel like it was kind of like the parts they were on the Star Cruiser. I mean, you have Lando literally saying the Halcyon Star Cruiser, come experience, like he talked about experiencing a certain like part of it or whatever.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
it felt really on the nose on some of those parts, but cutting out the parts with him, the Star Cruiser specifically, the other 35 minutes was really good. I feel like it was really good. Like, I like the I guess little 2 or 3 part stories that kind of went on there. Like, you have the Obi-Wan story, you have the Kylo Ren story, and then you have the wasn't there another one? Kylo Ren, Obi-Wan.
Kylo Ren, Obi-Wan.
Wasn't there a third one? Then
Uh,
Palpatine and Vader. Then
That's
Palpatine and
it.
Vader.
Scarif.
Yep. Okay, Scarif. Yeah. So I like that you had basically a 3-part little story in the middle of the entire episode. To me, I found some of the best. I think the Kylo and Han and Leia story was probably the best one, just because it was kind of like before he got shipped away to go with Luke. I thought that was really good. I liked the Palpatine and Vader story just because it was a fun little thing. And like I said before, like, sure, it doesn't sound anything like Ian McDermott at all, but the guy who plays the Emperor does a pretty good, like, I could see that being a Lego Emperor, like that voice. So I like that one. And then the Obi-Wan story was all right. But to me, I think my biggest takeaway, like, the Lego special was solid overall, but I think my, it was solid. It was enjoyable. It fit the bill of being like a summer special. But one interesting part, I mean, I'm sure you've probably noticed it as well, Chris. And to me, which means, so like, this is technically after episode 9, correct?
Yep.
Okay, so follow me here on this one. I think they have ideas of where they want to go with Poe, Finn, and Rey. And the one thing, so you have Finn talking to Ghost Leia, and Finn talks about how, Poe's going to go off in his direction with like the rebels. Finn himself is going to go and search for other Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
And then Rey is going to go to the unknown regions, because he literally said the unknown regions to search for Jedi temples. And I was like, man, if they're allowing the Lego people to do those type of stories, that means that could be our potential direction for those characters once we eventually get back to them. Like, what if we get it where, I don't know, what if we get a Rey Disney Plus series, her exploring the unknown regions or something? Like, you have plenty of options to go there. So I think that's the biggest, like, of course the special was enjoyable, but to me the biggest takeaway was that's a nugget of information of where our new big 3 is heading.
Yeah, that was shocking to me. And even setting up the beginning of the episode with Finn, and they did this in the holiday special as well, with like acknowledging that Finn is a Jedi, or at least is Force sensitive enough to be able to speak and listen to the Force ghosts, is already a big step in the right direction. Like, okay, they clearly know where they're going, and I know it's not canon. This is technically like canon adjacent. So, like, for instance, what I mean by that is like the one character, Valera, in the Obi-Wan show. I looked her up on Wikipedia. She actually was mentioned in canon in the Star Wars Squadrons flight game that came out in 2020. So you got that. But I mean, you got to imagine they're not just telling us that for no reason. That is what they're probably going to do with those characters in the future. And it makes sense. So for now, that's like headcanon for me. But that's really cool. Like, hey, maybe, I don't know if, like, John Boyega was like, you'll never Disney Plus me or whatever is like the famous quote he has. But like, what if they come out with like the sequel adventures of Rey, Finn, and Poe, and then like it's like the Mandalorian, but in the sequel era, and you have different character arcs and doing.
If they bring back, if John Boyega decides to come back, I guarantee he's gonna have a lot of demands, and I don't blame him. Because money for sure. But he's a really good actor. I mean, he's been putting out a lot of good stuff since Star Wars, since his last film. But like, he said it himself. I remember it was so funny whenever they did what's it, Dune? Whenever
Yep.
Oscar Isaac did Dune, I think he released a picture of him wearing like this armor. I remember John saying like, "Why don't we get this in Star Wars?" He like, "This looks more like Star Wars," you know. And I know he had a significant, huge issue with how they portrayed his character and how they kind of like let his character kind of like
Mm-hmm.
go to waste. And so I feel like if they do bring him back, if he wants to come back, he's going to say, "Yo, you guys need to really like push my character and develop him to where like he gets representation. He's being pushed as a character. He's being challenged, and he actually has a significant role. Because all he
Oh.
did in the sequel trilogy, spoilers, is yell Ray and chase Ray, and like that's all he did.
I mean,
well, okay, except for the first movie, not Rod Skywalker, the Force Awakens, he
Yeah.
actually had a good character story.
was
I'll give
good.
him credit on that. That was pretty good. I can't even hate on that. But after that, dude,
Yeah.
the next two movies, what does he do?
I know. Well, the funny
Like-
thing you say that, Milton, is like when me and my cousin, we're watching Rise of Skywalker in theaters. We go to all the premieres,
Uh-huh.
and he literally elbowed me and said, "Well, there was the agenda to like Finn yell Rey, basically."
Exactly.
um,
And which is so unfortunate because
John Boyega was awesome.
Yeah, that's the thing. He's such a good actor. He did a really good job in The Force Awakens. That's the only one that I actually do like because it's the original setup of that trilogy, and they actually have character development and a good story. Then after that, it just goes off the. And I'm just talking about him and specifically, what's he doing in The Last Jedi? He pines after another girl potentially, and he still is like just pining after Rey. He does it in Rise of Skywalker. Like he doesn't really do anything. It's like, wow, dude, we were all punked thinking that he was going to be like the next Jedi.
Yeah. Well, like I always say, like I mean, I've been on board with it. I feel like Campy and Harloff, they brought it up years ago on their show, on Collider. Like, if you watch the first Force Awakens trailer, it seems like Finn is going to be another Jedi. Like, that's what it feels like JJ was going to do. And that's clearly what he was doing with Rise of Skywalker. I mean, it happened. Like, he was Force sensitive. So, yeah, like you said, the poster tells you that. But yeah, like with me, with all this stuff, like John Boyega with Finn, with who's Poe? Oh, Oscar Isaac. With Oscar Isaac, especially Oscar Isaac being involved in Disney Plus series, and then you have Daisy Ridley. I feel like, I mean, she's done some things, but she's not like rocking Hollywood right now.
She's not really doing anything right now.
So like I feel like you could get these three back. Oscar Isaac's already on board with Disney stuff. Daisy isn't doing a ton. John Boyega, I feel like would be the hardest, but like the Joker says, like everybody has a price, like so they could get him back, and you could get something out of this because like you mentioned, Chris, they wouldn't have given that nugget of information for this Lego show to say Poe's building the rebellion, Finn, I'm going to search for more Force sensitive people, and then Rey's going to the unknown regions. Like, they would have not given that piece of information if that's not a concept that's in development at Star Wars right now.
Well, here's the thing, right? With the Rogue Squadron movie by Patty Jenkins, which got pushed back further, that is where we're going to see Poe Dameron. That whole thing about, the Rogue Squadron, now that they mentioned he's going to get these pilots and all, I think that story is taking place after Rise of Skywalker. I think that Oscar Isaac's going to be in that. He's going to be helping train the next generation. I do think that they're going to try to get the Mandoverse stuff done first. Like, when that's all finished up, 7-8 years from now. I don't know the exact date, but, like, let's just give it another 5 years or something.
Yeah.
That might be the next big, like, event for Star Wars is, hey, we've had enough time separated from those characters. Now it's time to bring them back bigger and better than ever, whether it's in movies or it's a conjunction of movies and Disney Plus series that becomes like the MCU by a certain degree or something like that with Star Wars. Who knows? But like that's my take on that.
Here's something for you guys. Think about this with the whole, especially with the Marvel build up and structure of things. What if they do something like this? Say Rogue Squadron, you have Poe involved, then you do a Finn Jedi search movie, and then you do a Rey unknown regions exploration type movie, and then you get a movie like a fourth movie to like top off whatever's going on with all three of them, like kind of like your Avengers team up type deal. Like maybe they do like kind of standalone character type adventures that eventually get us back to the big three.
I would like that, because we got reports that Kathleen Kennedy's not interested in trilogies anymore. She's literally been quoted. So that makes a lot of sense. Like, make those the same kind of thing that Marvel's doing.
Yeah.
Going that direction. They got Kevin Feige. What is he doing for Star Wars? Maybe he's going to help architect that, and then in fact, like, help, quote unquote, fix the sequel trilogy by building the arcs and these characters stronger in these other films that'll come out.
Facts. I mean, look, I'm all about whatever makes Star Wars better, and I think the sequel trilogy left a lot of, ill will and unfaith. Like, it just didn't bring enough faith to fans who really love this property. Now, I'm sure there's fans that like those movies. We all know that.
I think it added skepticism.
I think it did. I think it just said, we kind of lost confidence in this property. And that's the thing, though, because early on, 2015, 2016, back-to-back films were hitting. Force Awakens and Rogue One. Then Last Jedi. Then Solo. Then what was the next one after
Rise
that?
of Skywalker.
Rise of Skywalker. It's like, we're getting these misses. And then even with the series thus far, Mando Season 1 and 2, fire. Boba Fett, lukewarm. Obi-Wan, good. And then there was another one. I think there was another series. Oh, they were supposed to be like Rangers of the Republic. All these other ones that were getting canceled or moved around. So it's just that weird unknown place that we're in right now.
The Rian Johnson trilogy gone.
Rian Johnson trilogy. The Colin Trevorrow script that was released about Duel of the Fates. It's like, what would that have made the trilogy better? I don't know, but you're right. I think if we get a plan like Marvel just did recently with Phase 5 and 6,